Hi, this is Ashley from Made-in-China.com. Welcome to StarTube, your monthly business report. This channel aims to help our buyers conduct business more smoothly with Chinese suppliers. In this channel, you will find Chinese industrial info, professional purchasing expertise, global business analysis. Now, without further ado, let's move on to our first episode, Intro to Industrial Clusters in Zhejiang. The industrial cluster was introduced and popularized by Michael Porter in The Competitive Advantage of Nations in 1990. Basically, it is a geographic concentration of interconnected businesses, suppliers, and associate institutions in a particular field, which is considered to increase the productivity, drive the innovation, and stimulate the new business. In 2020, China has surpassed Japan and became the second world's largest economy. The industrial clusters have been a driving force for making Chinese products competitive in the global market. Most of the professional buyers understand the importance of that when sourcing products, because location often represents quality and after-service. Now, let's dip into one of the most famous clusters, Zhejiang Industrial Clusters. Zhejiang Industrial Cluster is a new economic geographic phenomenon that emerged after reform and opening up. In practice, Zhejiang's agglomeration of industrial organizations and their spatial morphology has shown high economic value, especially in terms of exerting regional comparative advantages, completing capital accumulation, and enhancing regional competitiveness. Regarding specialization, there are Shaoxing's Textile Industry Group, Haining's Leather Industry Group, Yongkang's Hardware Industry Group, Yueqing's Low Voltage Electrical Industry Group, and Tonglu's Pen Industry Group, and so on. These dotted industrial clusters have become production and innovation bases for exploring international and domestic markets. Now, let's have a detailed view of Zhejiang's industrial clusters. For agriculture and food business, you can find suppliers in Hangzhou, Jinhua, and Taizhou. For apparel and accessory business, you can find suppliers in Huzhou, Jiaxing, Hangzhou, Ningbo, and Wenzhou. For art and crafts business, you can find suppliers in Ningbo, Jinhua, Taizhou, and Wenzhou. For chemicals business, you can find suppliers in Hangzhou, Jinhua, and Wenzhou. For consumer electronics business, you can find suppliers in Hangzhou and Taizhou. For construction and decoration business, you can find suppliers in Jinhua and Wenzhou. For electrical and electronics business, you can find suppliers in Huzhou, Hangzhou, Quzhou, and Wenzhou. For health and medicine business, you can find suppliers in Jinhua and Taizhou. For light industry and daily use business, you can find suppliers across Zhejiang province. For manufacturing and processing machinery business, you can find suppliers in Hangzhou, Ningbo, Quzhou, and Taizhou. For metallurgy, mineral, and energy business, you can find suppliers in Quzhou and Taizhou. For textile business, you can find suppliers in Huzhou, Jiaxing, Hangzhou, Shaoxing, Jinhua, and Wenzhou. For toys business, you can find suppliers in Lishui and Wenzhou. For transportation business, you can find suppliers in Jinhua and Taizhou. For security and protection business, you can find suppliers in Ningbo. For bags, cases, and boxes business, you can find suppliers in Wenzhou. For furniture business, you can find suppliers in Ningbo and Taizhou. For office supplies business, you can find suppliers in Hangzhou, Ningbo, and Wenzhou. For auto, motorcycle parts, and accessory business, you can find suppliers in Taizhou and Wenzhou. For lights and lighting business, you can find suppliers in Ningbo, Taizhou, and Wenzhou. For sporting goods and recreation business, you can find suppliers in Hangzhou, Jinhua, and Quzhou. For tools and hardware business, you can find suppliers in Shaoxing and Jinhua. For industrial equipment and components business, you can find suppliers in Taizhou and Wenzhou. For packaging and printing business, you can find suppliers in Taizhou and Wenzhou. As is known, it's rather important for business people to understand fundamental indicators about certain areas' economical potential. Despite all the differences between the countries, you need to know general growth, inflation, saving rate, and consumption of the country that your business lies. For the convenience of watching, we select light industry as an example. Light industry stands for product consumed within the family, like cups and tables and etc. In the global market nowadays, the top 3 countries in terms of light industry market space are the USA, the UK, and Australia. Within these countries, we can expect different developments in the coming year. Let's have a look on how to analyze this information. America's real GDP decreased 3.5% in 2020, compared with an increase of 2.2% in 2019. The decrease in real GDP in 2020 reflected decreases in PCE, exports, private inventory investment, non-residential fixed investments, and state and local government that were partly offset by increases in federal government, spending and residential fixed investments. Imports decreased. The decrease in PCE in 2020 was more than accounted for by a decrease in services, led by food services and accommodations, healthcare, and recreation services. The decrease in exports reflected decreases in both services, led by travel, and goods, mainly non-automotive capital goods. The decrease in private inventory investment reflected widespread decreases led by retail trade, mainly motor vehicle dealers, and wholesale trade, mainly durable goods industries. The decrease in non-residential fixed investment reflected decreases in structures, led by mining exploration, shafts and wells, and equipment, led by transportation equipment, that were partly offset by an increase in intellectual property products, more than accounted for by software. The decrease in state and local government spending reflected a decrease in consumption expenditures, led by compensation. The price index for gross domestic purchases increased 1.2% in 2020, compared with an increase of 1.6% in 2019. The PCE price index also increased 1.2% in 2020, compared with an increase of 1.5%. Excluding food and energy prices, the PCE price index increased 1.4%, compared with an increase of 1.7%. Australia's GDP decreased 3.8% in 2020. The customer price index rose 0.9% on the contrast. The household saving to income ratio declined from its record high last quarter, but remains evaluated at 18.9%. The fall was driven by the partial recovery in household consumption, which outpaced income growth. Household disposal income grew 3.4%, reflecting increases in both labor and non-labor income as the activity in the economy increased. Domestic final demand contributed 4.3 percentage points to GDP growth. Household final consumption expenditure contributed 4 percentage points as restrictions lifted for households and businesses. Public demand contributed a further 0.3 percentage points. Household spending recovers. After falling a record 12.5% in June quarter, household spending rebounded in September quarter, rising 7.9%. Spending remained weak, down 6.5% through the year. Reductions in social distancing measures and other restrictions encourages spending on services, which rose 9.8%. Hotels, cafes and restaurants, recreation and culture and transport services rebounded. Spending on health services recovered as deferred elective surgeries and visits to medical practitioners resumed. Spending on goods increased 5.2% this quarter and is up 3.5% through the year. Compensation of employees rose 2.3% last quarter, reflecting an increase in hours worked and a rise in employment. Average compensation per employee rose 0.4%. UK gross domestic product (GDP) is estimated to have increased by 1% in quarter 4, October to December 2020. The level of GDP in the UK is now 7.8% below its quarter 4 2019 level. In November, GDP fell by 2.3% as restrictions were in place to varying degrees across all 4 nations of the UK. The largest contributor to this fall was accommodation and the food service activities, followed by wholesale and retail trade. Other service activities and arts, entertainment, and recreation reflecting the reintroduction of restrictions in some parts of the UK. These 4 sectors accounted for nearly 80% of the fall in services. GDP increased by 1.2% in December 2020 as restrictions were eased early in the month in many parts of the UK. The largest contributor to this increase was accommodation and food service activities and other services, as the easing of restrictions across many parts of the UK in early December boosted demand for these consumer-facing services. In quarter 4 2020, household consumption decreased by 0.2%, following a bounce back of 19.3% in quarter 3 that reflected an easing of public health restrictions. In particular, there was lower spending in restaurants and hotels, which fell by 20.2% because of the reintroduction of restrictions. These restrictions also affected retail sales, which experienced a 0.4% fall in volume. In quarter 4 2020, according to the latest official retail figures, mainly because of a 4.1% fall in November as a result of enforced closures of non-essential stores in much of the UK. Footfall data on UK high street, retail park, and shopping centres show the impact of November restrictions, with UK overall retail footfall falling by around 20 percentage points in this month before recovering to October levels during the first half of December. Meanwhile, household spending on transport increased by 5.9%. After standing at -31 in October and -33 in November, the GfK Consumer Confidence Index reported a recovery in December, up to -26. This index dropped at the beginning of the pandemic from -7 in February 2020 to -34 in April, recovering slowly since June up to the -25 points registered in September. You should find out this information in your country and analyze it accordingly.
Here are some tips you need to know for better sourcing in China. Firstly, you need to identify the industrial hubs related to products and raw materials. Secondly, some clusters are moving to the central and western China. In order to gain cost advantage, you need to follow the trends due to the increasing costs. Thirdly, for better price negotiation, you need to understand your average product cost structure, raw material prices, the wage of the region in which your product is made. Okay, so that's the end of our first episode. We look forward to hearing from you. See you next time. Bye bye.
Preview of the next episode: trading terms and how to smoothly negotiate with the Chinese suppliers. See you soon.